Too many of us force ourselves to create, and we're not co creating with the flow that we have access to. And that access is not permanent. I have to remind myself that just because the world and society and school has taught me to be disciplined in a sense of very rigid routines doesn't mean that that's right. I can unlearn that and I can learn how to go with the flow a little bit more. Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Twenties Detox. I'm Bianca, your host, and I just talk about all things that I'm learning or unlearning in my 20s to basically enhance this time of our life. It's a lot sometimes. There's a lot of life transitions, a lot of new things we're experiencing, and there's the existential crisis or quarter life crisis that can happen for a few of us in this decade. So I'm just trying to share what I'm doing to just make it um just a lot smoother. So sometimes I'm just talking with myself or I have some guests with me to share things that they're more knowledgeable about. And yeah, it's actually been kind of a hot minute since I've recorded an episode. The last episode would have been with my grandma, and she shared a lot about what made her happy in life and how she had a positive outcome most of the time, even though she went through a lot of stressors in her life. And I'm really happy that I decided to do that kind of sub series on this first season of having my great aunt and my grandma talk about how they have navigated their life and the lessons that they've learned because one, I'll have that forever because they are getting older. My grandma's 85 and my great aunt's 90. So every day's a blessing, and I'm always really, really grateful for all the times I can see them. But then, too, I also think that I'm very blessed into having such incredible role models in my life. And I know that some of you guys don't have them. If I can just share with any of you their stories in order to motivate you to keep going or motivating you to take that next step in your life or just basically comfort you in whatever situation you're in, like that's awesome. And that makes me so happy. Like I said, I haven't really recorded an episode in a while. I've been kind of traveling, I guess. Um, I was in Florida with my sister and a couple of our friends, and that was really great. We just spent the whole time basically like reading and journaling and having deep conversations, and it was a big social media detox. I wasn't on my phone very much, and in fact, I haven't really been on social media, if you guys have noticed, that much and posting consistently. I think I go through phases where I'm really into it. I want to show up. I want to be on social media and post about things, and it's more just because I'm like really into it. And then other times, I am so not interested, and I don't want to show up, and I don't want to share things that are happening where I don't have the creative energy. And that's kind of what I want to really mainly talk about today is how important it is to go with creative flow and why it's okay to take breaks and take a step back and not obsess over some of these rigid routines that we have kind of been taught since grade school to get things done. And it's okay to not go with that original routine you set up, or it's okay to not finish everything that you've put on your checklist for today. Some days you're going to have more energy than others. Some days you'll have more creative flow than others. It changes every day. And I believe that it's really connected with maybe on a more spiritual basis, the universe or the energies that are happening that day, or it can just be what your current situation is, right? It can be your social battery if you're seeing a lot of people and you're not used to that and you don't have enough energy at the end of the day to get into your creative flow because your energy is burnt out, stuff like that, and I just think that in recent weeks or in this past month, I've really started to accept it finally. And it's taken me a really long time because I feel like I've always been a major workaholic, a major person of rigid routines and schedules. And I feel like if I didn't have a routine, then I was all over the place and I was filled with anxiety. And I also had a lot of perfectionist tendencies. If you go on my Instagram, the Twenties Detox Instagram, and you scroll right to the beginning, I was so consistent. Everything was needed to look a certain way. I needed to alternate some pictures with another to make it look aesthetically pleasing. And then now I kind of just post what I want and I post what I want. And it's less about the aesthetics and more about the content and the quality. And I'm finding now more than ever, I'm connecting with people that resonate with what my true message is. And it's, I think, because I've allowed myself to go more with the creative flow and less with the rational brain or the my brain telling me what I think it should look like or what it should be versus what is calling to me, if you know what I mean. So, what have I been up to? So, I already said I was in Florida for a little bit. Very relaxing. I had a wonderful time with one of my best friend and my sister and her best friend. I think I'll remember this trip forever. And if you guys can do it, travel with your friends. And I think it's the ultimate test in friendship sometimes of whether or not you guys can travel well together or be with one another that much. And my best friend and I, we had a little bit of a bickering situation just one day, or one night. Alcohol was involved, and that kind of brings out both of the sassy parts of us, but it's all love in the end. And you know what? It was such an amazing time, and I feel like that strengthened our friendship even more. And that was the same with my Ellen and I. We have an episode um, on this season so far of our 6 week trip in Europe, and I think it's just, you're gonna go through some bickering times with your best friends when you're traveling, like, it's bound to happen, but as Ellen always says, you just gotta be a goldfish, like, you just gotta forget about it, and you gotta make sure to stay present and realize, like, "Listen, this is a lot for anybody to be with each other for 24/7, and, I mean, if you can get over that and really just, like, have a great time and just open up the conversation about it, it shouldn't affect anything, and that's what we did and it was great. But after Florida, it ended up being back to back, this situation of my family and I going to Italy. We actually booked it before the pandemic even hit, and it's with a tour, so they had to constantly push it because they wanted me to make sure the pandemic was in the clear. I mean, you could travel previous summers, but because it's through a tour and it was expensive, they didn't wanna take any chances until it was really in the clear, but, oh my gosh, it was incredible, but there were some mishaps, and I'll get into it. The tour was exploring the Great Lakes of Italy, the Northern Great Lakes specifically. We went to Lake Maggiore, Lake Como, and, I think honestly, the town of Baveno or whatever, was one of my favorites, and, of course and this is more, I guess, of emotional connection to it, of the town of Bolzano, which is the hometown of my Nonna. She was born there, well, she grew up there during the Second World War, and then took a boat over to Canada because she had an aunt who lived in Canada, and we saw her home. It's interesting to learn about history now. When I was younger, I freaking hated history. My history teacher fell asleep in class. So did I. But maybe it was because he did. I don't know. But hated history when I was younger. And now I just have such a new fascination for learning about history and languages. It's so cool to me. I don't know, do you guys feel the same way? Like, when you're growing up, you're like, the things that you hated when you were younger, you're actually really interested in learning now? It's kinda are we growing up, guys? Is that what's happening? I don't know. The trip was so incredible. I have such a love for water and mountains, and oh my gosh, the culture there is just amazing. I'll talk about the complications now because there were a couple. One, so we were flying, I don't even know, should I say the airline right now? Maybe if you guys live in Canada, you can put the pieces together on the airline. But we flew from Toronto to Milan, or that was our original flight. And there was going to be a stop in Montreal. We were supposed to stay on that plane. It was the same plane to go from Toronto to Montreal, Montreal to Milan. But when we got to our gate in Toronto, it was insanely packed. I've never seen an airport this packed before in my life. People were shoulder to shoulder, and it was because for, I don't know, the whole day, our flight was at 5 PM. So when we got there at 4 PM, people have been sitting there all day long because the previous flights to get to Montreal have been canceled due to technical issues. So a lot of those people are actually getting on this flight. And it turned out that everybody on that specific flight had connecting flights or were getting on the flight and going to Milan later. That already worried me because I know that there are a lot of issues with checking bags and whether or not it's going to get to the destination that you're going to. So I was a bit worried. We got on the plane. We got on time. It wasn't delayed or anything. And basically, the whole flight, I was hearing this lady talk about how scared she was about how she was not going to connect to her next flight. I think something to learn from that because I was just wanting to tell this lady, it's okay, you're going to live. My friend who travels almost every weekend, he's just like, Bianca, like if you miss a flight, you just get the next flight. It's not the end of the world. Okay. And if, especially if it's because of an airline being delayed, they'll get you on the next flight for free. It's not like you have to pay much more or any more. Anyway, we got off the flight and I have an air tag in my luggage. So I did that when we were in Montreal. Um, my luggage said it was still in Toronto. I went to a lady at the front desk for at the gate that we were getting on from Montreal to Milan, and she like immediately shut me down. She didn't even let me finish my sentence before saying, "Oh, air tags are like really inaccurate in airports." I didn't even tell her it was an air tag yet. I just said I tracked my luggage just because I understand there are a lot of issues now. To be fair, if the AirTag is actively or in live time updating its location, that's accurate. But if it says it can't update your location, then that's where it could be in an area that doesn't have service or it's on the plane, essentially. But if it's resetting and the location still says Toronto over and over again, then it's there, lady. Okay. So do your research before shutting a customer down because I was upset about that. But whatever. Couldn't deal with it. As you can probably guess, when we got to Milan, my luggage didn't arrive. Actually, it was just mine. My sister, my dad, and my mom's all arrived. But mine, along with about half our plane, our luggage didn't arrive. Put a claim in to get the lost luggage, and long story short, I didn't get it the whole time I was away. I finally got it at the last hotel, which like the night before we were leaving, and we were leaving the next morning. So that was a bummer. The next mishap of this trip was to same airline, guys, same airline. To go from Milan to Toronto, they canceled the flight. And because of the cancellation of the flight on the way home, I didn't get home until Sunday night. Um, and with the time change and everything, I was exhausted. So why does this matter, this story? Well, it doesn't really. Just kidding. It does because I have been struggling to post regularly for podcast episodes, as you can probably tell. Like, I have been doing it every other week for the last month, in part because I am traveling and I want to be present in those experiences. And I realize a lot of the time of when I'm working, well, I work to basically enjoy my travels. And I didn't really want to work on my travels. Some of you guys are like, duh, why would you? But every other time that I've traveled, I've kind of done that. Like I said, I have workaholic tendencies. So to relax and basically do nothing is not in my nature. And it's just because I've put a lot of productivity into my worth. So when I feel like I don't do anything productive, I'm not really deserving. Yeah, that's something I'm unlearning. There's an unlearning thing in the 20s detox thing. I'm still unlearning that. I think it's gonna take me more than just 6 months, or I've been working on it for over a year now. Slowly but surely, I'm getting better because this trip I didn't work, and it didn't bring a lot of anxiety like it once did. I couldn't post a podcast episode the Monday after I came back from Italy, and I said that I would. I promised I would for you guys. But that's kind of what I want to talk about. I In the past, I would have probably forced myself to record a podcast episode that night when I came back from Italy in order to get one up for the Monday because I wanted to keep my word. And that's not really a bad thing, but I think too many of us force ourselves to create, and we're not co-creating with the flow that we have access to, and that access is not permanent. It comes in and out, and it comes in waves, just like we have our ups and downs in life. And unfortunately, I think just this society thinks that it should be an everyday thing, it should be a constant thing. But in reality, a lot of us, we have periods of time where we have a lot of creative flow, and then other times where we have none. And what I have tried to do is give myself some grace in the moments that I don't have a lot of creative flow and it doesn't come naturally. And I try and gain inspiration during that time to take the next step. I try not to overconsume social media or movies, um, because I can get into that routine of not creating at all. So you need to remember to kind of stay in tune with how you're feeling. It also can be like for anything, that's like creative energy. But what about social energy or mental energy or emotional energy? That kind of thing, that they're all different. So if you have periods of time where you're like so ready to have like lots of gatherings or see people or go to events or go to concerts, like go for it. Go with your gut and do those things because maybe if you're like me, that doesn't always come all the time. Like there are moments, there could be months or weeks where you just really want to stay alone or you want to hang out with like your two closest friends and your partner, and that's it for the next month. You don't really have a desire to go to a party or socialize or do a bunch of things because it doesn't call to you right now. And why is this so important? Because, especially for our generation, we have to think about it a little bit more. It doesn't come as instinctual as maybe older generations have because they have lived with themselves so much longer and they're just strengthening, whether or not consciously or unconsciously, their intuition and their connection to self to know when to say no. Like they have the ability to say no to some situations or stand their ground. That does definitely take practice if you are somebody that is not used to that kind of behavior. But the number one thing that going with the flow and creative flow versus resisting this lack of flow is burnout. I've found that it is the number one reason why I get into burnout. And it's because I'm using way more energy if I'm trying to do something that is not coming naturally to me. It's a harder thing to do in some situations. Like if you work a 9 to 5, you can't just tell your boss, no, I can't do this week. Sorry. But I definitely think because there are a lot of aspects in our life that draw energy. If you are living with a partner, or maybe you're living alone, be mindful of the fact that it isn't coming naturally to you and what kind of things can you do to prevent a burnout. Maybe it's, I don't have the energy to cook this week. I literally don't. So maybe I'm going to go and I'm going to treat myself to a dinner tonight, or going to stop by my parents' house and have a dinner with them this week. Or, like if you're living with your partner, they can cook dinner this week and you just let them know, like, my energy level is like at a 20% right now. Like, I cannot do this. I have so much to do this week and it's not coming naturally to me. It's not a good week in that sense. So that has helped me prevent burnout because I don't want to be unrealistic in saying that everybody has the ability to create a day to day for themselves that is in alignment with their energy levels. Because if some of us have jobs that don't work for that, or we have responsibilities that we can't give to other people, it's harder. It's definitely harder. But you gotta remember, dude, like, you're not a machine. Like, you can't do this all the time. And it's okay to take a step back and it's okay to ask for help so that you're not burning out. Another thing that going with the flow really helps with is it helps with self discovery. Creative flow, or going with it and not against it, will allow you to tap into more of like your true passions or things you're really gifted at, and your talents. And maybe it's even understanding more of your unique perspective on things and your morals and things that you really matter to you that you never really consciously thought of before. And all of that really allows you to be more comfortable with your sense of self, which is such a struggle, I think, in this decade of just being comfortable with who we are. And we do too many things of what people want us to do, whether that be our parents or our partners or the friend group. And that takes up too much energy. If you're not going with your true alignment, you just got to realize that this is your life, period. It's your life. It's not your partner's. It's not your mom's. It's not your dad's. It's yours. And once you start putting that first and protecting your energy in that sense too, of not doing what people want you to do, and maybe tapping into things that have always interested you, but you've been kind of hesitant to get into or afraid that people will judge you, and it's okay if it's just for a period of time. It doesn't need to be your end career. It doesn't need to be what makes you money one day, or it doesn't even need to be something you're really successful at. But I think everything you do can give you some sort of lesson or transferable skill in your future. Going with the creative flow allows you to learn more about yourself, what you really, really want versus what maybe people want you to be. Another thing that going with the flow really helps is just becoming more adaptable in life. The only constant is change. I've said that before. And when we over obsess on rigid schedules, perfect example is this Italy trip that I had. I had a vision for it. I wanted to dress a certain way. I wanted to do these things. I wanted it to be very smooth sailing. And it was anything but that. And allowing myself to surrender to those situations and continue to go with the flow in that sense allowed me to just still be present and still really love the experience and just not let it get me down as much. I realized at one point, I'm like, Bianca, you're not going to remember the things you wear in 20 years. You're not going to remember the things you wear, but you may remember the things that you've seen and the sights that you've seen or the conversations you've had with some people, and that just put things into perspective for me that, okay, yeah, this sucks, but it's not the end of the world. Just like I wanted to tell that lady on the plane of her being afraid of connecting to her next flight. We have to let go sometimes. Like, we have to just let go of all these expectations and rigid thinkings that we have. Because if we do that, if we hold on, we're never going to be happy because we're setting conditions on happiness here. I just think, especially in this time of our life, we have life transitions, we have changes of education, maybe career choices, or we are navigating different relationships. And the flow with life really allows you to think outside the box, like I just did on this trip, and allows you to look at the brighter side of things, like my grandma said in the last episode, because everything is going to change. We can't hold on to things. Dynamics and friendships may change. Maybe you're not going to have your career the whole time because maybe that company goes bankrupt. I don't know. Or you don't like it anymore. And the sooner you try and just go with the flow of things versus resisting change, the more or the sooner you're going to experience happiness, no matter what happens in your life. Another thing is it really just allows you to be overall authentic, connecting to that self discovery. Sometimes we're a reflection of people and environments. We're a reflection of possibly our parents or our partner or our friends, or we have these masks on ourselves in order to mold each of us into certain environments to please others. That takes a lot of energy because you're pretending to be different people all the time. Authenticity and just being with creative flow, personally, I think is you're connecting to your higher self. And that is true authenticity because you're acting through a sense of your purpose. It's not through the ego, it's not through a role that somebody or you have created for yourself. And it's not rational, meaning you had to really think about it consciously. It comes intuitively. And because of that, I think you're going to attract more of those people. You're going to attract more authentic people. And maybe at the same time, the people that wanted you to stay in this mask or wanted you to conform to the way that they were living, they may not stay. They may leave. They may be a friendship breakup or a real relationship breakup, or your boss doesn't want you working for them anymore because you're no longer letting yourself being taken advantage of. But is that really a bad thing? Think about it. Like, is that really a bad thing? No. And I think this world really rewards people that have the courage to follow their own authentic path. Maybe the situation you're in right now is no longer serving you, but you're too afraid to get out of it. There's no creative flow. There's no flow at all. It's totally cut off. If you feel cut off, you feel disconnected, you need to recenter yourself. You need to journal. You need to think about what is something you got to let go. And honestly, sometimes that thing to let go of may be really scary. I have to remind myself that just because the world and society and school has taught me to be disciplined in a sense of very rigid routines doesn't mean that that's right. I can unlearn that and I can learn how to go with the flow a little bit more. Cultivating a kind of healthier balance will allow ourselves to just be happier and be more at peace and create amazing shit, amazing things. You know, artists out there, if you feel like you're creating out of an empty cup, take a step back. Try and fill up that cup. Okay. I'll see you guys. I want to say next week. I'll try and see you guys next week. I'll say next time. I'll see you guys next time. Yeah, I have a few more episodes left of this season, and then I'm taking a break. Okay. But also, I think I'm just going to plan in advance more so that I don't feel like I need to create out of a time where I'm not in the creative flow, if you know what I mean. So, okay, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.